Okay, so we're on week 1, day 3, which is Wednesday in your packs for maths, and we're looking at equivalent fractions and decimals today. So firstly, there is a PowerPoint slide for this lesson similar to yesterday. Have a look through that along with all of the voice recordings on there. I'm going to go through the learning reminders before talking through your tasks. So, first of all, the first learning reminder, mark decimals on a number line. So this number line starts at 0, ends at 5, and the markers are in tenths along here. And you can see that decimal points have been placed already. It says count along the line in tenths. So 0.6, if we were looking at yesterday's lesson, how many tenths do you think that would be? It would be 6 tenths. If you were looking at making 6 tenths into finding an equivalent fraction, 6 tenths in its simplest form, is there anything you could do? Have a think. And there is. We can turn 6 tenths into 3/5. That's equivalent. 3/5 would be the simplest form. But for today, in a decimal, 0.6 would fit on the number line here. So have a look at, give yourself maybe some other random markers. What would be the decimal point number for this space? What could the decimal number be for this? And so on, just to practice your decimals. You can see some have been marked on. Okay, next learning reminder. We have, remember, we can write equivalent fractions for each decimal. So this is like we did on the previous page. We have 0.5 as the decimal here, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tenths along the number line before we get to the whole one, to the number 1. And we know that 5 tenths, an equivalent fraction is a half. Okay, and the half would be 5 tenths written in its simplest form. We've got 1.2 would be the same as 1 and 1/5, okay, which could be 1 and 2 tenths. Again, it's been simplified, and so on. Write the decimal and the equivalent fraction the arrow is pointing to. If possible, write it in its simplest form. So there are some examples which have already been done. I'm going to write another arrow there. First of all, what would be the decimal number for this point? What would be the number in tenths for this point? Let's have one more here. So try and have a go at this one. Same again, what would the decimal number be? And what would be that number in tenths? Could you simplify the fraction if need be? Okay, practice sheet. Practice for everyone, decimals and fractions. Label these decimals below the line. So you've got a number line starting at 0, ending at 2. You have been given these decimals. Place them on the number line. I will pick 1.2 to show you. So I know that the number 1 here, we are 0.2, so 2 tenths after the number 1. That is where my 1.2 would be marked. Try and do the rest. Label the equivalent fractions above the line. Okay, so I need my equivalent fractions for 1.2, and I know that it is 1 and 2 tenths. If you want to go one step further, could we put 2 tenths into its simplest form? Yes, we can. 2 tenths is equivalent to 1/5. So my point here would be 1.2, which is the same as 1 and 1/5. Challenge underneath. Label the equivalent decimals below the line. So you've got to have a go at labelling all of these points. Can you use the line to find 1.5, take away 2/5? Now it says hint, remember the frog. We haven't looked at the frog method, so just ignore that. What I would do here is change 2/5 so that it is in the equivalent fraction to a half. So we have 1.5, mark that on the line, that would be here, 1.5. And we want to take away 2/5. We need to work out what 2/5 would be on this number line, and then you would do your jumps that way. Oh, forgot to mention, mark on 1/5 and the equivalent decimals. For each 1/5, you would mark on, and then its decimal number there. Okay, have a go at that. You've got your answers there. I'm just going to cover those up for you to self-mark. If you're a bit stuck, let me just make sure those are both in the camera. There we go. The sticky tense is an activity you can do with an adult and involves you cutting out some squares in order to make 1s and 0.1s. You don't need to print this sheet off. You could use the squared paper in your maths exercise book and use it that way. I'm not going to go through that now. You can do that with an adult if you're a bit stuck and you need a little bit more practice. Checking your understanding, you have some questions to end off today's lesson. So, true or false? Go through these questions answering true or false, and then whoop, your answers are underneath and you can make sure that you're checking your understanding. Okay, good luck.